cultures of the world. Everything is different from culture to culture, from the language, from the tonation of it, from the body language as you go through, from the dress, from the apparel, from meanings of small gestures as you go through the process, openness, the close as you go through, touching your face, sitting down, what time you show up, when can you talk, when can you talk business and when do you talk social, when do you make the connection? They're all different, which is why international business ramps up every portion of business, because you're dealing not just with your product, not just with marketing, but product and marketing in a different culture than maybe they were created initially as you go through. Aesthetics as you go through. It really is a sense of beauty and good taste, because you may be ethnocentric, as we talked about earlier. You have a personal set of values that you think this is beautiful and this isn't as you go through. Art, drama, music, folklore, dance, they're all part of somebody's culture, and they all have roots as you go through. So you see an activity, when you go to the theater in a different country, the way they act, the way they perform, the way they rhyme their poetry may be totally different than anything you have ever experienced before, and make certain you don't have contempt in the process because it's not the way you were raised. Make certain you have a tone of excitement and adventuresome in the process, sitting out saluting their culture as it goes through. Ideas about the body and what is physically beautiful will change from just crossing a simple borderline into a different country which has a different culture. Folklore sometimes has powerful connotations. Sometimes you have a lot of superstition. Sometimes you sit down and you do one thing because this is happening all the time. Sometimes you knock on the wood. Sometimes you sit down and tap your forehead as you go through the process. You want to sit down and have different aspects of what is aesthetically pleasing and what isn't. Does plain paint on the walls look good, or do you have to have tile on there? What kind of color? Should the floor and the wall and the ceiling all match, or should it be different textures because they're different surfaces you go through? Religion. In the United States, we do our very best to avoid talking about religion, except it really has a significant impact across the entire planet, and people will do certain things because of their religious faith in the workplace. I have a friend of mine, she said she was my physical therapist for about a year and a half, and some different things we worked on. She was an Egyptian and she had dual citizenship here and in Egypt. She pulled out her Egyptian driver's license, and right on there it said Christian. Okay, and literally, if somebody else had one and they were Muslim, it would say Muslim on their driver's license. That would never fly in the United States, except over there, it's very common as you go through. You can hire people based upon their religious beliefs to make sure they fit into your culture. Over here, if you did that, you have a lawsuit on your hand very quickly. It really is different because it's accepted over here. Here it's not only frowned upon, it's illegal, and things could happen to you in the process. But sometimes religion plays a huge role. Here you have Jerusalem, the Temple Mount. Actually, the Jewish faith and the Muslim faith both have concerns about that site because they both have implications for both of the religions at the same time. And right next door is a Christian site as well. The three religions of the world all tend to focus in right over there in Jerusalem as you go through. When you look on the religions, you start looking at the percentages. Okay, Christianity is 31.5%, Islam is 23.2%, Hinduism is 15%, Buddhism is 7%, and then Judaism is way less than 1% across the entire aspect of it. You'll see different parts of the world, they have different things in different respects. Don't even think about talking about having beef in India. That would be a real insult to the people that are around you, since they consider the cow to be one of the most sacred animals as part of their culture. So you have to sit down there and adapt to that as you go through the process. Don't even think about having any kind of ham or pork in the Middle East. You're going to insult the Jewish faith, you're going to insult the Muslim faith in the process as you go through the process. So be careful about what you're doing, what you say, and what you do. Study the country before you start thinking about conducting business there as well. Material culture or artifacts, all the human-made objects of culture really play a role. Art is totally different between what we see in the United States. Sometimes something here in the United States may be offensive someplace else, as well as something there could be offensive to us over here when it comes down to it. Language makes a big distinction in the process. A lot of Americans go abroad and expect everybody to cater to them and speak English at some level or have somebody available. Except if you are going abroad and don't take time out to learn some of the rudimentary of the country you're going to, then we consider you to sit down and be an interloper coming in from the outside, trying to impose you and your will upon their culture as well, and the reaction may not be positive. Non-spoken communication, it reveals a lot about social interactions and values. North American nonverbal communication is very different from South American. It's almost totally alien to the Asian culture as you go through. You may be a master at reading nonverbal communications in the United States, where you have English, Spanish being very interlocking here as you go through, but you go across the ocean in India, somebody is trying to be positive and they look negative because of the fact you're misinterpreting what their signals are for their nonverbal communication as you go through. Spatial relationships also differ as you go through. In Japan, they actually have people they pay. They have white gloves on in their subway stations, and their purpose is to go through and shove more people into the subway. Okay, and everybody's packed standing as he possibly could, and they don't have a problem with that. In the US, we tend to have an 18-inch minimal spatial distance between us and the person that surrounds us. One time I was at an event and I had a personal friend of mine. He came up to me, and even though he was also a Caucasian, he also was an American, he didn't have a spatial issue, and he kept on getting closer and closer to me. And I started backing up until finally he was about 4 inches away from my nose. I could feel the spit hitting my cheeks when he talked to me. I was almost freaking out because he was so close in the process, but he didn't mean anything about it, and I knew, okay, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. As they stood there that close, to me, that was really difficult to cope with in that situation. But if I'd been from a different country, okay, if I came from Japan, that would have been no big deal because that is part of their lifestyle as they go through, because it's part of their culture. It's not part of mine. And I had to sit down and just relax in the process because spatial relationships differ between me and him, even though we're part of the same culture as you go through. Roughly, there's 6,500 major languages in the entire world. That's a lot. So you start talking about that aspect of it. You may be thinking you're saying this over here, and here you're insulting the host by saying something inappropriate as you go through the process. Societal organization, sometimes they really have a different series of sets of social relationships. Kinship and free association, often the family is a basic unit on kinship as you go through, but sometimes people will open up their family to people that are personal friends over time and almost adopt them as you go through. Again, free association can be formed with commonalities such as a group of people the same age, a group of people of the same gender, a group of people that have common interests, and you start forming organizations around it, sometimes informal, sometimes formal as you go through. The social structures can really influence us at almost any functional level. You'll have rules and organizations as they vary across different cultures. Gift giving in business really is very interesting as you go through. It's very common on the holiday seasons that people sit down and exchange gifts as you go through. But it's sometimes people say, well, we're a taxpayer-funded organization. You can't give us a gift over here. But by the way, my address is so-and-so. So they take it at home as they go through the process over here. Or you can't sit down and do that. I'm the chief business officer. Send it to my address, not to those people over there in HR. They can't take that stuff, but I'll be happy to take it off your hands. And sometimes a gift is nothing more than an open bribe as you go through. Here's a gift. Take somebody out to dinner and you give them a huge gift card in the process. It depends. In some cultures, it's accepted. Other cultures, if you do, it's disdain. It looks like bribery, and you may lose business over trying to get business as you go through. Here's a critical thinking question for you. Just think about the concept. Your company has a policy of no gift giving or accepting. You're going to the company negotiations in China, and by the time you're all done, what do you do in China if they offer you a gift? Think about the process as you go through. In the world, aesthetics are different. Religion plays a more dominant role a lot of times in culture than we have in the US. Social relations are a big thing. And then there's 6,500 languages in the world, and each has a cultural twist of their own. Watch it, enjoy it, because it's a fun world if you sit down and pay attention to what you're doing, saying from a verbal, non-verbal too, as you go through. Take care.